Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. And CP, I hope you are very thankful because we just went through Thanksgiving, and I hope you had a good holiday.
Dude, I had a great holiday. I don't think it was as good as yours, but mine was pretty good.
Mine was fantastic. Thanksgiving Day is actually one of my favorite days of the year, and it's not actually really a movie day for me. It's mostly, football on, and maybe you can catch like some years we go to the movies. That's kind of fun on the holiday weekend because there's a lot of movies that came out. This last weekend was spectacular for Hollywood, and I know we're going to get into that with our box office breakdown, so that's pretty cool. But there's also Christmas movies and other stuff, so I don't know. I got to go to the Notre Dame USC game.
I was going to say, I know that's the thing that you're the most thankful for. Obviously, Notre Dame won, so we're all happy. And everyone who's listening to this podcast hates us, but that's fine. I mean, I don't really care.
No, Thanksgiving was great. I just love that day. It's just good food, family, friends. It's special. I don't think there's any other holiday like it.
The real thing I got to ask you is this. Have you started watching Christmas movies yet?
Officially, Steph and I have. We started off with A Christmas Story. So I don't know if you have as well, but what have you watched already?
Well, I have seen Best Christmas Present Ever in the theater. I also saw Red One in the theater. But in terms of the movies that I watch every year, I have watched Elf, which was the kickoff of my holiday watch list.
That is a great one to kick it off with because it's just all Christmas, and the energy in Elf, Will Ferrell just brings it. So
it's hilarious.
Yeah. Crazy good holiday movie. But all right, CP, before we dive into our topics today, and we do have something special in store, we got to do our shout outs. So first up,
let's do it.
Eric Drucker chimed in on Wicked again. He's continuing the conversation from the shout out that
you got to let this one go, man. It's not that good a movie.
He's continuing the conversation from last week. So at the end of every episode, CP, we say, make sure to continue the conversations. So Drucker, 2 thumbs up from D-Man. I love your passion, and I love when you leave comments. So Drucker, you're the shit. All right. So he says, I don't know where the no CG thing came from, LOL. I just super enjoy the songs. I did prefer the original Broadway singers than these ones. It was a nice little cameo from them, though. I'm annoyed that there's a part 2. I didn't see The Hobbit because it was a 3-parter, so this goes along with that line of thinking, LOL, which I actually agree with him, too. I mean, as far as Lord of the Rings being broken up into 3 movies, it makes perfect sense. I mean, there's 3 books, even though I know you can get into the whole Tolkien lore and how he originally envisioned it all as like one story broken up into chapters and all that shit. The Hobbit is really just 1 book and probably only needed to be 1 movie, realistically. There is a lot in it, but yeah, it being broken up like that definitely was jarring for me as well, Drucker. So I agree with that.
So, Drucker, just to respond.
CP's upset.
I still am a little disappointed. Normally, I can count on you, Drucker, to agree with me. So I'm a little pained at your absolute love for Wicked. So D-Man and I actually talk about this. So I just want to make my case to the audience. Like, the movie was fine, but I think my bigger issue with Wicked, just so I can explain it, is this. Obviously, I had never seen the musical, and it's not because I don't like musicals. I just had never seen that musical. So I guess if you're coming at it from the perspective as someone loving the musical, I understand why you like the music and the show and the all that stuff. My major issue is this. Wicked was written as a prequel to an existing book series and film. And my issue is, as a creative, watching someone create a prequel that fundamentally changes the nature of someone's original work, I find really concerning. And talking with D-Man about it, the example we came up with is this. Imagine we watch the movie Rogue One, yet instead of getting the half-assed Rogue One Disney movie we got a movie about a very sympathetic Darth Vader who is working to undermine the Emperor's efforts to create the Death Star and is actively trying to destroy it before it goes out to work. That has now changed the entire concept of Star Wars, or an even better, like I mean, if that's the case and we support Wicked, then D-Man, I am going to go out and write a prequel to Harry Potter where a like charming and clumsy Voldemort is out there rebelling against an evil, tyrannical Dumbledore that's running like an Epstein Island. And it turns out he's only killed when he goes to take out Dumbledore's cronies, James and Lily. And that's how Voldemort dies and creates the Horcrux. And then that leads into the rest of the 7 Harry Potter novels. I think everyone would be really mad because that's not the intention of Harry Potter. Nor was with Rogue One that the intention of George Lucas's Star Wars trilogy. And that's how I feel. And I need to be clear, like The Wizard of Oz is not my favorite movie. I never read the book series, but I do know that like the original authors had an intention, and Wicked fundamentally undermines that.
I do want to say, CP, you made me really happy when you said, imagine watching Star Wars. And I was like, oh.
And from there, we lost Dustin.
Fantastic. I mean, for anybody that's listening, not watching, I am rocking a Star Wars sweatshirt right now. So, you said imagine watching Star Wars. I get it. But I do also agree with your sentiment to a certain extent, which is like, right, if we were to, see this happen across multiple sort of popular IPs, right, they all sort of get a Wicked treatment. The thing is, like, in this case, right, this isn't George Lucas himself doing this and everybody's pissed at the original creator. It's most likely a big conglomerate, or in this case, it was a creative himself who wanted to do something fun and sort of add a twist on top of the original intent. And I think there is a little something to Wicked that I want to extend, CP, to Drucker's way, and maybe a little against your point, which is that people have made the case for years watching The Wizard of Oz, the movie, that, right, Glinda might actually be the villain, right? That if you pay attention to some of the dialogue, she sends Dorothy on this quest when she could have just sent her home, or like different things. So to a certain extent,
because Dorothy wouldn't have believed she could just go home unless she had grown through the journey, through the hero's journey that she went on to find the inner strength.
I know
herself to get home. Come on,
but
go back 2 episodes and listen to the episode we did.
I'm just acknowledging that I think people have pointed out sort of these little hypocrisies, with Wizard of Oz, because it's been around for so long and dissected for so long that it almost feels a little natural that something like Wicked might come out that, kind of twists the original intent. So I don't know. It's super popular. I mean, box office wise, I mean, I think you just might be wrong, CP. And I love to say it. So
wow.
I think you're wrong.
Wow.
Next up in our shout outs, that was one shout out, CP. That was
I'm done with this episode.
It's gonna be great.
Going on.
Next up, I do okay. This is gonna turn everything around for you. We got a comment on one of our old pieces of social media content about Beetlejuice, and AJ Maples agreed with you, CP.
Yes,
said, plot wasn't the best. Felt like a cash grab. Keaton lacking in energy, and they should have flushed out the afterlife world more like the cartoon and went on a grand team-up adventure in the other world.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
People are still agreeing with you, all right?
All right. Well,
it's not over. It's just Drucker. It's just Drucker. Gary Osberg chimed in on a Nora and said, can't wait to hear your take, which you did share on social media. So hopefully, Gary, you got a chance to check that out. CP, I don't know if you want to go on another rant real quick. You're free to.
I have nothing to rant about. I think I posted that I liked the movie.
All right. Yeah. Go check out Instagram and you'll see CP's rant on the movie. Ivor chimed in. Now we're talking Gladiator, last week's episode. Right. And he chimed in on Gladiator. He said, too similar to the first Gladiator, in reference to Gladiator 2. The better storyline was Pedro Pascal's character. The movie ended. And
I mean, you do bring up a good point. Pedro Pascal's character was incredibly interesting. We built in a lot of stuff with, we're not going to go into the spoilers, with his kind of juxtaposition in the middle of Maximus's past life and stuff, and they really could have leaned into that. I mean, he could have even been a someone who had served under Maximus 16 years prior, and we could have really started to get
Well, I agree with Ivor's point to the idea that it was a bit of like the characters felt like sort of just plug and play into the archetypes of, the template of the original Gladiator. And there were two characters that really stood out, and that was Pedro Pascal's and Denzel Washington's that didn't feel like they were just kind of copies of what the original did, and they really brought something different to the story. And to that end, I think for most people, they were sort of the highlights or the strong suits. But I mean, I know everybody's sort of like, I don't think it's as good as the original. I mean, the original won Best Picture. It's considered a classic, and I do think the action was pretty dope. So
Mhm.
say what you will, but Q chimed in, and this is on Gladiator as well, said felt rushed with no character development. So
Ooh.
Q, that summed it up very succinctly. Thank you. And then CP, we have to round this out properly, but we have another shout out from Drucker. He's chiming in multiple areas now, but this one is probably going to make you smile. So he said, "What a fun episode! The country song at the end slaps. What AI did you use? We used Suno, so it was fun, and it was definitely cool to create that." He said, "Also, sorry we didn't agree, CP. We usually do.
All right,
You're right. Also,
Drucker's back in my good graces.
I knew it. I was just waiting the whole time. I was like, oh, I got a redemptive shout out here that's gonna save the day. And Drucker, you're the best. He also said top 3 historical movies: Gettysburg, Munich, and Ben-Hur. Honorable mention goes to 10 Commandments.
Now I imagine Drucker is talking about the original Ben-Hur, not the abysmal remake from the 2010s.
No, I'm sure he's talking about the original. Those are all good. I mean, I went on the Spielberg kick, Drucker. So Munich coming in. I mean, fantastic list. I love that.
Yeah.
And even the honorable mention, a classic, that famous shot of the parting in the seas. It's so good.
Yep. All good.
So, well, that was a lot of fun, actually, for shout outs. The interaction this week was just fantastic, guys. I couldn't have imagined that going any better. So, CP, you know what time it is. I'm going to throw it over to you. Let's do our box office breakdown.
All right, it is time for our box office breakdown. So, Christmas is in full swing, obviously, because number 5 in the box office this week, D-Man, is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
Wow, that's pretty good. I mean, right on cue for the holidays. So it makes sense that people would want to get festive and go see a Christmas movie. So I'm assuming, Thanksgiving weekend is usually where they start coming out.
So that has made $32 million.
Wow.
But the real interesting thing was that was number 6 in the box office last weekend. So it is actually ticking up because people want to get in the spirit of Christmas. And again, I just want to give a shout out to my buddy John Quinn, who was an editor on that movie. I really loved
congrats.
It, and it was
nice.
It's good to see your movie doing so well, man. Number 4 in the box office, another Christmas movie, D-Man. Any idea what it could be?
I'm guessing Red One.
You would be right.
Okay.
And Red One has made almost $150 million worldwide. What I find really interesting is it's around the $75 million mark in both the domestic market and the worldwide market, which, well, apparently there's a little something for everyone literally in that movie.
I love how if you just juxtapose those two films, you can sort of sum up Hollywood a little bit, which is, I'm assuming, at the $150 million mark, which sounds great. Red One is projected to end up in the red. It's probably not looking at a huge windfall, and it's not probably performing the way that they hoped when they originally conceived the idea. Versus 32 million, you're one spot lower for the greatest Christmas pageant ever told, and yet I bet that movie is financially fairly successful.
Yeah, right.
Which is pretty wild when you think about it. And so, just how different, the movies can be.
So, yeah, the tale of two Hollywoods. So, number 3. Now, this was number 2 in the box office last weekend. We did a whole episode on it. Gladiator 2.
Okay.
When we look at the numbers, Gladiator 2 has grossed almost $325 million worldwide.
Fantastic.
As we talked about last week, though, about 113 of that is from the United States, but over $200 million is worldwide. So again, this is performing much better overseas than domestically.
And it's always interesting because I think there's some movies where, that can sort of be predicted. We've talked before about sort of Universal, the monster movies, Godzilla. We've also talked about um, some of these like historical epics, right? You're talking about the Roman Empire. That's a sort of worldwide historical thing that a lot of places do know about,
Hmm.
versus some smaller American IP like Beetlejuice, or you know, I don't know, different movies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Number two, what was number one in the box office last weekend? Drucker's favorite movie, Wicked. Now, again, Wicked is continuing the same trend as before. It has made close to $268 million domestically,
Wow.
but only 97 million worldwide. So this is the total opposite side of the coin
Hmm.
of
Yep.
Gladiator 2. So the total box office haul on this is just north of $365 million, which I think is exactly what Disney was or Universal was expecting when they put that one out.
Yeah, I mean it's performing well. Obviously, I think it is tied a little bit to you are tying into the Wizard of Oz lore, but a little bit more than that. I think you're tying into the stage and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
theatrical stuff. So, I mean, I get why that wouldn't perform well worldwide because that was very much an American cultural thing.
Yeah,
So, I kind of get that, but I already know where you're going with number one.
I'm
And
sure you do.
if this movie failed, then Disney failed. But they got it right.
Moana 2, number one in the box office, just over $400 million worldwide. Again, about 175 million internationally, 230 million domestically. Yes,
Stunning.
it did come out during the holiday weekend, but I don't think anyone had any doubt in their mind that
Hey,
this was not going to be a box office
right.
success.
That had to be a box office success. I know the reviews and some of the praise is a little tepid. I think the people that went and saw it though really liked it, which is usually the audience score. That's
Mm-hmm.
for a movie like
Mm-hmm.
this. That's what's really more indicative of about whether it's going to be good or bad. And that feels like one where I think the audience went and they're like, yeah, no, maybe it's not as good as the original, but it's great holiday fare. It's great, or not holiday, but like family fare. While where the families are together for the holidays. So
Absolutely. I mean, good family movie starring The Rock, sequel to a very popular Disney movie originally. Now, let's swap internationally because there's something very interesting that I have noticed looking at the international box office trend.
mhm.
So, as I'm sure all of you anticipated, in pretty much every single international film market, Moana 2 is number one.
Mhm.
Now, if it is not Moana 2, do you know what the number one movie in most foreign markets is at this point in time?
No, I have no idea.
Now, this one baffles me because it came out in the United States. It just came out back in July.
Oh, so they're doing an international release now.
Yep. The movie
Oh,
Longlegs.
no.
Yeah. I was kind of shocked when I was looking at the international numbers and seeing that this is, if it's not no Moana that's number one, the number one movie in every other foreign market is Longlegs.
That's weird because first of all, I don't know that I would
I
pick
wouldn't
long
have thought
legs
that in any
to
way.
perform at any, we're not talking like holiday time, just at any time to perform that well internationally.
Well, I
I
mean,
would,
when you think that Gladiator 2 is still out there and
yeah,
a
I
lot of
wouldn't
other,
have picked it.
yeah. So I just found that to be really kind of
Tip of the cap
shocking.
to long legs. How
Who
about
knew?
that?
Who knew? Yeah, we haven't talked about it in months, but here it is. So that is what is going on in the world of movies.
All right. Well, I'm really excited for our next segment, and CP, I'm going to throw it over to you. Take us in there.
We are really excited to unveil a very special segment. We are bringing on a special podcast guest, our friend Brian Wallace, and he's going to be talking about his exciting new television pilot, World Twistories. Brian?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me on and for taking this time. We have our East Coast premiere this weekend. I'm flying out on the glorious Spirit Airlines to
Oh,
New York City at 5:30 in the morning. And we'll be screening the thing on Saturday. So I can't be more excited.
Oh my
fantastic.
gosh. D-Man and I have both seen the pilot and we love it. The
Thank
first
you.
thing I got to know is like, what was the decision to do a pilot? Because it seems overly intimidating to me. Most people just want to do the really easy route of making a short film. So why
Yeah.
were you guys thinking, oh, let's shoot a pilot?
Well, we've made a lot of short films already. And one way of looking at it is that a pilot is, in a way, a short film. And I think really the subject matter really lends itself to it, because the series World Twistories is about eccentric people throughout history and their offbeat ideas, and what happens to them. And there's so many of them over the last several centuries of human existence that come to mind and that we have episodes planned for. And so just being able to do one episode after another, kind of an anthology series about all of these various characters and the things that they did during their brief span on this earth, it just seemed to lend itself to a series more than any other format.
So, I mean, just even the concept alone, how did you come up with this? Because watching the episode, I was like, I don't even know how, like, if you threw that into AI, I don't even think they would kick back that answer as like this actually happened in history.
Yeah, well, our pilot is about a man in the 1700s who opened a coffee shop, but it was a coffee shop with a twist. As a coffee shop that in order to go in and get coffee, you had to speak Latin. Yeah, it was a Latin-speaking coffee shop, and he wouldn't sell you any coffee unless you spoke Latin. I found that out because he was actually the father of a painter named William Hogarth. I used to live in New York, and I was a stage actor out there, and there was a great play by this British playwright called Nick Dear about William Hogarth, and I became a huge William Hogarth fan about that. It was called The Art of Success. And William Hogarth was this painter who kind of straddled this idea of, okay, am I an artist or am I a commercial player? How do I make money at this without needing a patron or compromising my values and my ideals? Well, anyway, I was reading a biography of William Hogarth after that. I always kind of enjoyed his paintings and his etchings. He had kind of a satirical mind, commented on society a lot. And in this book, it said, oh, his father opened a Latin-speaking coffee shop, and that was it. That's all it said, And so I thought, how can nobody else know anything about this? So I just did a little bit of research, but you just kind of come up with this idea of, okay, if I wanted to do that and I wanted to talk to my friend about my idea and tell my friend, this is what I was thinking about doing, how would that go? When I was a kid, one of my favorite memories was going to the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum with my mom.
Yeah.
I've been to one of those, yeah.
Oh, I went to the one in Florida, and I think there are like 2 or 3 in Florida now. It's a great place for one. But I just always became really interested in interesting people who just had these untamed impulses, as we call them. And they just have these wild ideas, and they just decide to kind of exhibit them in public and do their own thing. And this man with a Latin-speaking coffee shop is certainly one of those people. And history is just peppered with these folks. I think that, most of us are normal people.
Except for filmmakers, we're not. Most other people
on some level. Let me piggyback on that, because I think that's an important point. You guys were talking about like Gladiator on a recent episode the other day, which I love. I've always loved history, and two-thirds of the word history is story. And so it's all these great stories. Like if I were to come over to your house, even the bad history that we're supposed to be ashamed and embarrassed of and feel guilty about, if I were to come to your house and take your land and give you syphilis, there would be some conflict, I assume, at least for one of those things.
Yeah.
Definitely over here. Yeah.
And but the story of that conflict would be really, plot driven. There'd be a lot of twists and turns in that. But one of the things that if you make a historical epic like Gladiator, even Selma, any historical epic about civil rights, Roman Empire, anything that Errol Flynn ever started, one thing you really need traditionally is extras. You can't make it without extras. But that's what normal people are in real life, like myself. And I think, not to be too saccharine about it, but I think that there's something unique about everybody, something that we either become really good at or really interested in.
Yeah.
And if you have that you recognize, you will reach a stage in life where you have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do about it? Either I'm going to pursue this to the point that it complicates the rest of my life, or I'm going to try to tame it and tamp it down, and I'm going to go lead that normal life, which is nothing wrong with leading the normal life, and you go and get the normal job. And sometimes you work with people who don't bother to know your name unless they want to complain about something, or you just sign up to show up on time every day to be miserable. But our show is about the people who did the other thing. They had this little eccentric quality about them, this obsession that they had, and they put it into practice regardless of what happens. And as you saw the Latin-speaking coffee shop episode, they don't always have a happy ending, and maybe with good reason. Yeah. But I've just always been really interested in interesting people, and so because there've been so many throughout history, it just lent itself to the idea of a series, and that's how it's kind of my rambling answer of how I came up with this first idea.
I think that's a great way of following your train of thought. Now, stylistically, what were you pulling from as you assembled? Because as I said, watching it, it's actually really funny, and it could have, there's the PBS version of this where it's super dry and boring and factual. Instead, you guys make it hilarious and a lot of fun for the audience to go along and explore these quirky, eccentric people.
Thank you. It's to pull from, it had to be a lot of hodgepodge of other things, because at the risk of flattering myself, I don't think there's a lot that's quite like it, because it's kind of a new genre, what I call a docu-comedy, because you're trying to make people laugh, but everything is true. It's actually real. I grew up watching shows like, you guys are really young, you might not know In Search of, or Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. It's all these like odd like phenomena and UFOs and Loch Ness Monster, just like empty calories for the imagination. If you're like a teenager, you're like, you just crossed the threshold of puberty, but you're too young to drive. This is what really you do on a Saturday afternoon. I think the closest model you might have for it would be something that we were trying to avoid. Like when you're trying to combine something that's somewhat factual, that's factual with comical. The best model you've got is kind of like the Daily Show stuff. And we had a lot of conversations about that with Paul Longley, who's the host of it, who sits down. He does the interviews with the experts. And we really wrestled with, what is the approach here? And I was adamant that what we want to do is, it's got to be informative without being a college lecture, it's got to be entertaining, but this is stuff that really did happen. And that alone has to be somewhat appealing. And it lends itself to comedy because there's such oddball ideas that these people did. And the question was, I love the Daily Show. Like in its prime, I was like the biggest fanboy of the Daily Show that you could get. The issue with it is that today you have this template where people will sit down with like an expert and they'll ask them intentionally stupid questions. When it's done well, it's done really, really well. So Ali G did that as well. But you have a lot of that now, and that's what we were trying to avoid, because we were saying, we want to send up on some level the subject matter, but not the person we're talking to. And so that's where most of the humor is going to be mined from. But when Paul's sitting down there, he's just a charming, funny guy in himself, but he's not trying to make fun of it. So we're looking at what I guess in the real estate business you would call your comps. So in England right now, there's a lady named Philomena Kunk. She does sort of a history program, but she pretends to be stupid, and she'll talk to a legitimate historian and again ask Daily Show type questions that kind of
or even
undermine the stuff. Yeah.
I'm thinking even like the inverse of that, which is like this over exaggeration, something like maybe Drunk History. It's not very factual. Somebody's sort of just telling it, they are historians, but, they're exaggerating, and it's the comedy's derived from being drunk, telling this story, right? But structurally, I could kind of see or stylistically, like how the reenactments against what somebody's talking about in that interview style.
Yeah. There was an old show that I never really saw much of before. I forget what he called it. Conversations with. There's a guy named Steve Allen who used to be on every TV show. You guys are too young to remember him. He had big, giant Ed McMahon glasses. And I don't know, maybe Ed McMahon is before your time as well. But he did these, like, he would sit down, but he did it with a serious thing, where he had these actors playing historical figures. And it was just like they were at a dinner party and this is not like that, but that's kind of almost like the closest thing, because you're getting to know these historical figures. But again, they're the footnotes of history. They were never really important people in their own right. Yeah. So we had to kind of create the structure of it as we went along. And knowing that we wanted to explore through the comedy, a comical scene, the idea itself, and then the historian is there just to give you context and say, how wild weird an idea was this at the time? And what was this person thinking? Because this is somebody who would actually know. This is a person who went to school for this and everything. We didn't. So that's why we could laugh at it. But it's innately a funny idea, but then you have somebody say, here's what the backstory was, and here's where the guy wound up.
And I do kind of get that, because I like not knowing that. I mean, if you were to tell me, way back when they just had Latin speaking coffee shops, I might just accept that as like, I'll trust the historian. But like with the right context, I get where the humor comes from. Because if you don't know, you don't know. So you would just assume, right? That must have been normal at one time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, please.
Well, what I was going to say is what we were trying to fashion was, and we went back and forth again with what Paul's approach should be. And it was just, I kept saying just a nice, just a conversation, just a lighthearted chat. You know, you're not trying to teach anybody anything, and you're also not working too hard to try to make them laugh. And we kept trying to say, I kept trying to give him sort of models. And, you know, I'm an old, bald, jowly American, and he's like this young, strapping English guy. So I kept saying, you know, think about Dick Cavett. And he's like, Dick Cavett? I don't know, who knows Dick Cavett?
You know, and that was my question. Paul really is an incredible host. And
he is.
And I can see it as a huge element of making the show work in the style that it does. What was the process of bringing him on board? And more importantly, I'm kind of like, when we peel back behind the scenes, like, how much of what we see is sort of scripted, what you guys went into planning, and how much of it is kind of improv just from his personality?
Yeah. Well, okay, let me take your first question first. Paul came on board because we met him on the film festival circuit. Okay. One of the first, during COVID, he's been an actor over there in the old country for a long time. And his brother, James, who is also one of our co-creators, he works in production, basically on every major British television show that you could name going out today. Top Gear, all of them, you know, things like that. He's always traveling all over the world doing stuff. So he knows his stuff seriously. But during COVID, you know, there was nothing going on. And so they started making short films, and they started making animated films that were hilarious. And I wouldn't even get into it. It's Adventure Brothers Christmas. Google it.
Oh, that's
it's on YouTube.
All right,
the Adventure Brothers Christmas special. Oh my God!
Timely, right at the right time.
Yes. But you will
Perfect plug.
You will laugh so hard, and just all I will say is the grandfather's cameo. Just whenever you think about your grandfather, the grandfather's cameo is everything. The grandfather's cameo. I'm going to give too much away. I'm just laughing about it too much. But anyway, we kept getting into the same film festivals that they kept getting into.
Okay.
And we really liked each other's work. And then when I finally went to a film festival and met them there, we really hit it off. And I got to give a special shout out to a film festival in the old country called the Ealing Film Festival. It kind of blends in well with this because they started the Ealing Film Festival during the first year of COVID. It was the first year, and then COVID hit.
Tough year, yeah.
And instead of canceling it or postponing it, they went ahead with it. And I thought, okay, mad props. I respect anybody who's just gonna push through like that. And so it kind of blends into the impetus of our show. It's just people who just gonna do what they do. And so anyway, I met Paul and James there. Loved their work. We got into another festival based in Michigan. We just kept getting into the same festivals, and then ultimately we got our projects were selected to screen at the House of Commons in London, and I went over there for like 2 days just to see the screening of the House of Commons. I said, guys, how do we do this? How do we work? We like each other. We like each other's work. We keep talking about some way of working together, but my film partner Matt Mitchell and we live in Los Angeles. They live over in London. How do we do this? And let's just figure out some idea. And I had this eccentric history project in the back of my mind this whole time. Just the structure of it seemed to fall into place. It's like, okay, we can do the sketch from anywhere. So many of these eccentric people, they either lived in the UK or they lived in Europe.
Yeah, that's
true. And it's much easier and much cheaper for somebody who's already there to go to France or the Netherlands or other parts of England to do it than it would be for us. And so the division of labor kind of fell into place. And Paul has become really kind of a big deal in the social media space. He's got a ton of content on Instagram and TikTok. He's a dogged worker. I mean, this guy's work ethic is nothing. I mean, first of all, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's just one of the most genuine, kind people and most practical people you've met. And I always joke he's effortlessly charming, but he is. If you speak to him, what you see in our pilot is exactly what he is in real life.
Oh, so that's amazing. Because you can't buy that.
No, and we didn't pay him, so it's good. No, he's got equity stake in this, so he's a co-creator. So this is not that kind of relationship. But going to your question about how much did he improv, it was just the conversation. It was the sketch was written out. So that was all scripted. Again, when we were shooting it, some people had ideas here. We could work these things in. We could move these things around. But that was really planned out and scripted. I think I even did a storyboard, even though I always do. I don't know. You guys are filmmakers. You tell me. I have a Philistine's distrust of the storyboard. I don't know. I do it because I know I'm supposed to do it. But then I never look at it once it's done. I show it to everybody.
I'm the same way. It never in any way ends up being relevant to what I'm actually shooting. So I'm like, what a waste of time.
And in this one, it's basically two guys talking to each other. So it's like, and this one, it'll be that guy. And it'll be that guy. That was all scripted out. The interview portion was just Paul having a conversation with Abigail Cornick, who was the curator, our historian, who knew all about this story. And so again, trying to go back to the approach, he didn't know who Dick Cavett was, so I'm saying, well, I'm trying to think of British guys. Oh, there's an old guy named Michael Wood or Michael Parkinson. And then my friend Matt, who's American, he doesn't know who they are. So we're having these Zoom meetings, and everybody's just looking at their phone, Googling all the names I just named. I said, wait, okay. And it occurred to me just actually in the moment of this very conversation, who I should have referenced was probably Graham Norton or even Daniel Tosh. Who Daniel Tosh, I don't know if he's an acquired taste. He's a very aggressive comedian. He's fearless. I love him. But he does those things, web redemption. Well, he'll sit down and he'll talk with the person, and he'll do something zany at first, but then he lets that go. And he's just having a conversation with the person. He's always looking for a place to kind of make a joke when he can. Yeah. But not at that person's expense. It's still a conversation. But anybody who's genuinely funny, that's what they do anyway. If you're talking to somebody who has a sense of humor, they're always looking for a place where they can throw in a little joke or a lighthearted comment anyway. So that's what we kind of settled on. And I think it turned out really well. And we're very, very happy with it. I'm glad that you guys like it.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the actual production of the pilot. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to come on and ask you first of all, how much did you spend? Because it looks really good. I think most people are turned off by the idea of doing a pilot because it's really freaking expensive. So,
we upfront cost. Now, if it gets picked up by somebody and it gets to another tier, then it will trigger other expenses, like for our actors and things like that. But the most of the upfront costs went to Zanku chicken. So we were able to do that. And I tell you, when Matt and I, when we do things, we were very indie, very low budget, self-financed, all this stuff. And we really try to take care of our people. And the biggest secret that I always show, if you don't have a lot of time or a lot of money to make something and you want to work with good people, Zanku chicken. If you get Zanku chicken, you get Zanku chicken for lunch. You will wind up with something very good. They should be paying me, at least get me a discount. I ordered from them so many times. I wound up getting a really good discount code, but now I think because I always use it, I think they've now discontinued the code, so you don't use that anymore. But you can make something amazing because again, you really got to feed your people on set really well, and Zanku chicken is just the best there is. But that question is, one of the festivals we got into was the Fort Smith International Film Festival in Arkansas. And one of the reasons I submitted that, which we won Best Episodic there in August. So
hey, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very happy about that. And it was a brilliant time. I loved it. I don't know if you've ever been to Fort Smith. I've been to Arkansas before,
not.
but never that.
No.
Oh, go. It's really cool town.
All right.
The festival pulls out all the stops. It's really awesome. And one of the things that I was attracted to is they have something called the Mid-America Film Market. So in our festival strategy, I don't want to get caught up in festival hell with this project because I think you can do that so easily.
Yeah.
But this one had, a film market attached where you can kind of go and look at buyers and sellers and see, okay, who's selling stuff and what they're doing. And there were these two distributors who have an office out in Beverly Hills. They were really cool guys. And if you look on their IMDb, they've just been involved in some really impressive stuff. And they were, talking to everybody. And they kept talking about how, I can tell the difference between a $2 million film and a $200,000 film. I know you give somebody $20 million to make a movie, and they come back with a $500,000 film and they think I'm going to notice. And I'm like, give me a fifth of that, a tenth of that, a 20th of that. I'll do. And so when I had my little trophy in hand, I went up to him. I said, hey, listen, I just won Best Episodic for this pilot. I'm going to send you this pilot. I don't want you to help me with it. I don't want you to help me. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm not asking you to help do any favors, anything like that. I want you to watch it. If you don't mind, I remember you making this remark about, budget versus deliverable. I want you to tell me what you thought I spent on this pilot. I want you to watch it. And he said, okay, I'll do that. We got back to LA. I sent him the pilot. He emailed me back. He said, well, based on this, it's a very good project. Based on what I looked at and based on my experience with it, I would say he thought we spent 200 times more on the pilot than we actually did.
No way.
And I told him that, and he has not responded to me since. But I don't care, because the reason I really wanted him to tell me that is because it's a good gauge of how well we are doing. When you are an indie, self-financed, just kind of hard scrabble hustler in a way.
Yeah, the bootstrap.
Exactly. Teddy Roosevelt had the best line. He said, do the best you can where you are with what you've got. And if you do that long enough, then all three of those things will get better. So if that's all we can do, if you can tell me how much you think I spent on this, and it's like many times over what I actually did, then that tells me that we can create something really great. And again, also with the advent of the technology that's available today, I'm very much a Luddite. To me, I think technology is just one more way something can go wrong. But even I have to admit that what's available today that the indie filmmaker can use to create, you can create really, really good work. My friend Matt, who's my film partner, as I've said, he's a big gadget guy. He does all the, he's got like a cell phone that like, it looks like something NASA couldn't get. It's got a satellite dish on it. They're like things are in orbit around it when he walks around it. And he always makes fun of my phone. I think this is an iPhone 5 SE something. I don't even know what any of that means.
Yeah.
Whenever we take a selfie at a film festival, Matt will always say, "Oh no, this is my phone. Brian's phone sucks."
Right. Yeah, he's like, get the better photo.
But the point is, even this rinky-dink phone, if you were to go back to when they were making The Godfather or Indiana Jones, all the stuff like that, this is high tech compared to that. And you look at all of those seminal films that shaped generations, and how many warehouses worth of gear would Paramount have given you 20 years ago just for my phone, let alone what you guys are probably carrying around and all of your friends. So I think the technology is just crash the gates open, and if you're disciplined enough to sit down and learn it, you can do some really cool stuff.
Well, I'm curious too how the technology probably helped you guys collaborate remotely, because that's another aspect, is not just what's captured on film and the camera itself, but the ability to be in different places where I think, even 10 years ago, that's very limiting. It was hard to do.
Absolutely. I think Zoom was the savior there, and just doing a little bit of math is like how many hours separate us. What time is it there when it's noon over here and stuff like that. And also being able to edit on the same software so we could share it, so we could each, share the project and work on it at the same time, which you wouldn't have been able to do in the olden days. Thankfully, because of James Longley's profession, he's got like a WeTransfer account. Yep. So he could send anything that the FBI's got. Like he could send it to all of us. That's as much storage space as he can do. So it's like if we needed to send files, and even if it's like many, many gigs of data, he can WeTransfer it over. Now, again, my internet connection is like 2 tin cans and a string, so I'll get it 2 weeks from now. But it'll finally finish downloading. But you can at least share the stuff. And so that's just been a game changer. It's really, really smoothed out the process. One thing that did, I would say the hardest thing about it, which we did not expect, and it's one of those things where you would think, look, you had 4 guys, all of reasonable intelligence, somebody should have asked this question.
Yeah. Okay.
Why did nobody do it? This was a hardship because the actual shooting was cake. I have never been on a set. The actors, Whit Spurgeon, Christopher Hatfield, Bill Pryor, our crew, they all know what they're doing. They're all amazing. On their end, those guys know what they're doing over in the UK.
Love Whit. He's a nice guy.
Oh my God, Whit is amazing. And can I tell you, not only did he play the main role in our project, there's another show that came out called It's Florida Man. He's also been in an episode of that. So he's making, which I think, by the way, would be a good companion piece with World Twistories. But he's making a real career for himself playing these oddball kind of characters and eccentric folks. And so the actual nuts and bolts of the shoot was just so smooth. I've never been on an easier set. When it came time to edit, and this is something, it should have been the first question we asked when we were planning this thing. We shot an FPS of 2398. Standard in UK is 25.
Oh, Oh,
okay. Nobody knew that. I
wouldn't have thought of that at all.
And so, okay, so now here's the thing. We edit it together, but we're all watching it on our little screens, and that's fine, okay? So we get into Dances with Films LA, and they've got to put it up on a big screen. And there's a little judder. There's a little judder. I said, what is this? We never saw this before. And I got like 15 versions of this. Like, where did this come from? Where is it? And it's like, we did not uniform our FPS. Nobody thought to ask that one question before you shot. What FPS? They all asked, are you 4K? What camera are you using? Nobody thought FPS. Now we did for this one. For this one, we sorted it out. We just re-exported it in the right frame rate, so it's all silk. It's all golden.
Yeah.
And so I've got the DCP now, but because I've got such a terrible internet connection, I'm taking my my backup DCP. But it's got like, this thing's taking 12 hours to download. It keeps conking out. But I talked to the festival. They said, no, it all passed validation. It's all been tested. You're good to go. But I'm taking it as a backup. But that was the most frustrating thing because that cost like 6-8 months of our time. And I think even tempered and friendly as everybody is, I think everybody was getting a little bit frustrated. That, how many times are you going to ask for this stuff again? Because you have to rebuild some shots with the original footage and re-export. But if we just said, hey, what frame rate are you using? It would have saved us so much headache and so much time.
Oh,
I always hate when those things happen where you sort of have to reverse engineer something. Yeah. It's way harder to do it that way than if you had just done it the right way, or just ask that question. And it's just always so frustrating. Like I can imagine if you were actually right there at the festival and it's skipping.
Exactly.
I mean, that would infuriate me because I would be like, seriously, we went to great lengths to make sure nothing like this happened. And then it happens.
Yeah, and I was like, really, because to me, this is one of the things that's very special about the week ahead for me is that I used to live in New York for many years. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know that it would be so long before I'd be going. I haven't been back since moving. I've been here for a long time. I was a stage actor in New York, and I wasn't a big deal or anything, but I was like working regularly, and I had a nice little community. I had a nice thing going. I was getting insured regularly and all that stuff. I moved to LA, and nobody cares that you were a stage actor in New York, So you have to start all over, and it's basically, and I was an older guy when I came out here. So you have to start all over and just rebuild. And it's like, you have to figure out what I was saying earlier. I'm at that stage of my life. What am I going to do with this thing that I think I'm interested in or makes me interesting? Yeah. And is it going to ruin my life or am I going to tame it down and I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to go and get this. If I had moved to Oklahoma instead, maybe I would go get the regular job. But, I'm in LA and I don't want to move to LA and get a regular job. That defeats the purpose of moving to LA.
Yeah, why else would you live in LA unless it was
right,
man? Exactly. And so I had to start all over. And I silently resolved to myself, as my absence from New York grew and stretched to be longer and longer and longer, I would not go back until I had something to show for it. I didn't want to go back as a tourist or anything like that. And now, thanks to Dances with Films New York, I am going back, not just with something to take that I'm proud of for show and tell. I think it might actually be the best thing I've ever been a part of.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So again, there might be 3 people there to see it, but I kind of won't care. But that's why when we had that judder issue because of the frame rate mismatch, I was like, oh my God, we put so much into this. And I know it's in my heart of hearts.
I've been there. Yep.
And you don't have to, say that it's good if you don't think so. I believe that it's a really good project. In my heart of hearts, I know this is really, really strong and it deserves better than a juddering playback.
Well, I'm just going to tell you right now, if we didn't think it was good, you wouldn't be on the podcast.
Well, thank you.
Been like,
well, I'm just saying there's no need to be nice to me because that's one of the things is that, that's why I asked the guy, how much do you think we spent on this pilot? If he said, I think some Zanku chicken and you got ripped off, then that would have been good to know too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will tell you, your Luddite influence shows through. My very favorite part in the episode, I was busting up, was your AI quote unquote renderings of historic, the original coffee shop. That was my very favorite part. Who came up with that?
Thank you.
By the way,
that was all Paul Longley. That was that was an interesting story because that was when AI was starting to come out. And everybody has these weird takes on it. It became very controversial in our entertainment space.
Yeah.
People who love this stuff and people who love the technical aspect of the filming. So like Matt Mitchell, my film partner, he's just really interested in AI stuff and what it does. He plays around with it. We don't put it in our stuff. And then I think Paul was really loved playing around with it because, again, if you are a lot of the stuff that he does, that he gets a lot of traction for is his one-man sketches that he does every week, and he does them like clockwork every Monday, and I think again like every Thursday or something like that, and he just works like a dog doing it. But it can help you out if you're a one-man band who needs to get a lot of stuff done quickly, you know. So that's why I think, you know, he doesn't have a very negative view of it. But we were ready to start showing this thing at the time that the AI controversy came about. And I was like, oh man, and I asked Whit about this because, you know, Whit runs the We Make Movies Film Festival.
Yeah.
He's involved with everything and he knows everybody. And I said, and I really trust his judgment. I said, Whit, what do you think about this? I mean, is this going to really backfire on us? And he said, and it was kind of his suggestion to say, you know what, I don't think you need to worry about it that much. But there was an idea that's like, you know what, maybe if the AI, because even just a few months ago, it was like, you know, you do an AI of somebody that got like 11 fingers on one hand. And, you know, so you could tell. So let's lean into that. And Paul had some really cool AI images at first in the first cut of this that were really there. And he had tinkered with them. So it wasn't just AI generated. He went and edited them. So I felt bad about asking Paul. I said, listen, you know, I don't know what to do about this. I don't want to court too much controversy on this, especially since it's a new project. We're trying to make our names for ourselves. And we want the goodwill of our fellow indie filmmakers, you know, for this. If we start saying, okay, now we're using AI, we're not commenting on it. I'm not sure how I even feel about that. So he said, look, you know what I'll do is I'll do these little childlike drawings that look horrible. And so we're kind of poking fun at AI because at the end of the day, it is human beings, I think, are more stimulating to other human beings than anything else that we could look at. And so he was a very good sport about it. And I don't want to speak for him, but I will, for the sake of this conversation. I think he's content and happy with it. And he likes the way that it turned out. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hilarious, but I also think it's really smart. I mean, D-Man knows this. I was at a PGA event a couple months ago where they were talking about AI, and it's still so divisive throughout all levels of the industry. And I think it was smart because you took this way where you're kind of mocking AI's creative talent. It was a good laugh. So I think it was a really, really smart move.
Yeah, the acknowledgement too. Yeah. You know, I think sometimes that's where people get a little questionable is like, oh, are they sneaking this in there or that? It's like, no, it was all good. It was all in fun. I think it worked really well.
Well, yeah, that's what I hope. You're playing with that whole AI is such a buzzword now. Everything is AI, right? Every website you go to, everyone has their AI, whatever. You know, you go to the dentist and they're like, oh, we use AI. I'm like, no, you're doing the exact same stuff you did 5 years ago. You just threw AI in front of it. Like, shut up. But so it was so perfectly timed. I just love it.
Thank you. I hope that, you know, that's what we're hoping everybody who watches this takes it.
While we, I guess, head into wrapping up here, do you want to know what's the future look like for the show? And then obviously, like before we head out, we'll go ahead and let you plug it and, you know, kind of go through all the socials and everything.
Well, we've got it pending at a couple more festivals. We're really happy at the festivals we got accepted into and recognized from. I mentioned earlier, one of the things about this, I love film festivals because so many of the collaborators that I've worked with, I've met at film festivals. I feel like going there. I only submit to festivals that I think I can attend. And I just want to meet fellow travelers who are pointed in the same direction and want the same things you want, ideally as much as you do.
Yep.
And I think half the things that Matt and I have made over the last couple of years have come through collaborations of people we met at film festivals or the CFC, which I know you guys have an attachment to.
Yeah.
Roman Falkenstein, who did our music, we met him through CFC, and he's based in Latvia. So when we were doing the Zoom calls, we had to work in not just the UK and LA, but Latvia as well. But we wanted to avoid just sending it out to every festival. So we had a certain criteria of which festivals we would submit to, because I don't want it to get stuck in the festival. I think I'm not telling anything controversial here. There are too many film festivals. I mean, I think there are 14,000 just on film. We don't need that many. We need more than 5 or 10, but we don't need that many. Yeah. So we don't want it to get stuck. So the ideal, the goal is to sell it. And the purpose of the film festival is to get it seen through by as many people as we can, hopefully get it on industry radars. And we've had some good meetings since June with some people, nothing in stone yet, but everybody from like smaller production companies to a massive one that I won't name other than to say they produced something that was a massive hit show that we've all heard of. Cool. And if we could get hooked up with them, that would be cool. But again, they're very busy. They're much busier than we are, and we're not top of their list. But they keep returning our emails, and we've had a Zoom conversation with them a couple of times. So I'm hoping by the first of the year, one of these will play out or we'll meet somebody else in the meantime. One thing that might be interesting that they all have in common is that when I send out my pitch emails and try to, just get this sold, I get more responses from people overseas. It's like in the United States, it doesn't seem like anybody cares. But Ireland, I went to Ireland for Paul got married in Ireland over the summer. And so we went to his wedding, and I decided to make it a business trip as well because I'm really fun.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah. I'm just really, if you take me to Vegas, I'll be doing the taxes, I'm saying, save those receipts, guys.
Yeah.
So I set up some meetings, and I will say everybody in Ireland wrote back, said, hey, let's chat. And I don't know if it's because it's a smaller community there and they all just feel like, hey, it's worth having a talk. And everybody, the more we know each other, the better it is. But everybody, people from Australia, even some people from London, even if they said, hey, listen, we're not in the market right now, or the industry is really flat, they'll write you back. And one was this cold email of this guy saying, hey, this is brilliant. I really like it. I'm going to get some other people involved. And again, that's a time zone thing because they're like 11 hours ahead of us. Yeah. And so doing that math is crazy. But I don't know what that says about what we're doing out here in LA or even New York, is that that abroad, I wonder if that's where we should, as indie people, if that's where we should be trying to turn our attention a little bit, because they seem much more receptive to new content from new voices.
Yeah.
Just in my experience so far.
That's interesting.
I think there's so much content already. At film festivals, this is a strange thing to say as indie filmmakers, I think there's too much content as well. You're looking online, how many apps do I have to stream stuff? And there's a lot of overlap, and it's like thousands of, I can't watch it all. So you've really got to stand out. I don't know.
Throw it over to you and let you go ahead and plug everything.
Yeah, let the audience
let us know
where they can follow you. And
absolutely. If you want to follow me on X, I'm at, it's Brian Wallace. Company is called Fancy Movies. That's also on X at Fancy Movies. FancyMovies818.com. We screened the East Coast premiere with Dances with Films New York this Saturday, December the 7th at 11:30 a.m. at Regal Union Square. And you can go to danceswithfilms.com/world-twistories-ny to get the direct ticket link. And again, our website is fancymovies818.com. Everything we've got going on is going to be posted there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure. I'm glad
Dustin, Christian, it was fantastic to talk to you both. Thank you so much. I hope we get to do this again when we have more time. I feel like I could talk to you guys forever, but you're probably
I'm sure there's movies, other film topics, so many things we could get
just
into.
About Spirit Airlines. I'm happy to just.
Oh yeah, hey.
Don't get
our listeners know.
Thing.
I'll leave that alone for now.
No, I don't mind mentioning. I'm flying on Spirit Airlines. They just declared bankruptcy. I don't know if that means everybody working there is going to be out of a job for Christmas. But just think well of me. We were talking before we started. This may be my final public appearance. I'm glad. I couldn't have asked for better company.
I just hope you don't have to pay for a smile or anything.
I just want to keep my head down and no incidents. I don't need anybody to smile. I have very low expectations. And because they've gone bankrupt now, if I have a complaint, who do you tell that to who's going to care? That's how I'm thinking about it. So I hope that if anybody watches this, I've done well enough that they don't think, oh God, I'm glad he died in that Spirit Airlines. I'm glad he's dead. I hope they watch this and say, man, it's a shame. We're really going to miss him.
Oh no. Spirit Airlines. I'm so sorry.
No, it'll be all great. Thank you both so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I really loved it. And happy holidays to you both.
All right. Well, thank you so much again to Brian for coming on the show. I hope listeners, you all enjoyed the conversation. And as I mentioned in the shout outs earlier, Drucker, be sure to keep those conversations going. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, Drucker, Ivor, you guys are always chiming in and we love hearing from you guys. So absolutely fantastic. But be sure to follow the show at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have a feed of all of our previous episodes, as well as links to all of our social media. You can follow the show at Film Comp Podcast or at Film Comp Pod. And you can follow me at Big Kid D-Man CP.
And you could follow me at NDCal5. Thank you for hanging out and talking movies or TV shows with us on this episode specifically. But we can't wait to see you back here next week. And until then, keep watching movies.